psychology.
Someone came up to me the other day and said, what do I need to know about SATs? And I was like, yeah, I do kind of get that. There's loads of words, but what's he actually saying? Mental illness is a myth! Apart from that, obviously. But how does he get there? It's like picking up a blancmange. Well, let's pick up that big satsy blancmange. His first point is that mental health care is now the responsibility of the government. He's talking mainly US here, but that's the point that he's making. And that means it's become a legal political concept. They've declared it's a biological disease like no other. He quotes, what's his face? Clinton, you know the one. Quotes Clinton as saying it's a biological disease like any other. But SAT says, well, that's false. There's no evidence to support this. There's no antigens, there's no swelling, there's no blood tests. You can't take an X-ray. So, consequently, mental illness is a myth. And he said people come back at him and they say, oh, what about people that have had, like, apparently mental illnesses and then it turned out they had a brain tumour and that was affecting them. And he says, well, that's a brain disease. It's not mental illness. And he's sort of got a point. I mean, if the mind is a concept that we have constructed in order to think about ourselves, it doesn't exist. And how can something that doesn't exist be ill? But anyway, he says mental illness is not an illness, but it's a behaviour. And we use mental illness as an excuse for bad behaviours, and that is his insanity defence. That effectively makes psychiatrists as about scientific as astrologers. I got into a sentence I just couldn't get out of. Let's take another run at that. This makes psychiatrists about as scientific as astrologers. I like that. As a sentence. He says they're not doctors, they're effectively jailers acting as agents of coercive control for the state, that they drug people and drugging them is not helping them. But he does say that those who are classed as mentally ill can and should be helped with empathy and understanding. And to finally push him into a nutshell, his final key point is that realistically, we don't have the right to deprive people of liberty or free will just because we don't like their behaviours. If you see Minority Report, it's that kind of argument, I guess. And he says they should be free to make their own choices, even if their choice is to take their own life. And that is his argument. So there's the key things you can say if you need to describe his study, outline his study for, say, 5 marks. Pretty straightforward. What else might we have to do in an exam? You might have to explain why he says that mental illness is a myth. Now, the eagle-eyed amongst you will notice that some of the points I just made were in red and some of them were in black. To my mind, one of those colours is kind of his reasoning and the other is conclusions. If you look back, you might be able to see which is which would help you answer that question. Next, explain how things would change if Satz's ideas were to be taken on by the medical community. Would we drug people? Would we help people? How do you help people? Would we take away their liberty? Would we allow them to make decisions? Would they be able to plead insanity for behaviours that were deemed illegal? That's a few things you could comment on. And I've also finally written there, just for comedy purposes, how does Satz justify his conclusions about mental illness being a myth? Well, I'm an idiot, and that's basically the same question as number 1 anyway. See you later.